can't say why you should raise your kids in Bend, but I can say why I'm raising my kids here in Bend. And so you can just kind of read between the lines. Okay, so we've put this kind of video off for a long time because it's not something that we like to do. We're not the people that drag our kids in front of the camera and make a big deal about our kids. It's just not something that we acknowledge or really talk about. My wife and I, Shannon, we do have 2 kids, and they are our everything. And for a long time, it was actually very tough and difficult for us to have kids. And so after years and years and years of trying, again, I don't ever say this, but we had to rely on kind of modern medicine miracles. And now we have the best. Sorry, everyone, we've got the best kids. And so after having lived in Portland when I was a kid, up until about the age of 10, and then living in Nashville until I was about 18, I've experienced big city living as a child, as a youth. And gosh, and that was a long time ago. Just visiting major cities today, and we've obviously got friends that live in major cities and family that live in major cities, and we travel a lot to big major metro areas all the time for hockey and other stuff like that. The world out there is crazy, really crazy, and we find ourselves feeling so damn incredibly lucky that we get to raise our kids here in Bend. When compared to other places that we've been to and traveled to, Bend just feels really incredibly safe to us. First of all, the city's so small that it already inherently carries kind of an innocence to it as is. The city's very walkable already, and so therefore you can, it's easy to get over to, say, your friend's house or the market, or even walk to a restaurant, a food truck lot, or even the park where you're going to catch a baseball game. And as I mentioned before, to us it feels very safe. Also, there are parks like everywhere in Bend. Bend Parks and Rec has jurisdiction over more than 80 plus parks just in the city limits alone. So no matter where you live, you have very easy access to send your kids to go play in the park of some kind. Yet another thing that is really difficult to properly explain or define is that this city, even though we're just ticking over 100,000 people, is not so anonymous in nature. You still run into people at least we do, almost every time we leave the house. And that sense of community helps us feel safe. To know that there are good people around, no matter what, that look out for each other. It's a very neighborly community. And again, I can't tell you what it's gonna be like for you. I can only really tell you what it is like for us. The schools are great. One of the interesting things that I've noticed here in Bend that is really vastly different from other parts of the country or other communities that I've lived in is that there are not very many private schools, which is interesting, and I think something that people should understand and perhaps recognize. There are some, but not many. The reality is that there isn't a huge demand for private schools because the public schools, generally speaking, are doing a great job. I mean, is anything perfect in today's world? No. And I will admit that we have thought of putting our kids in private school, but there really isn't much to gain from our point of view. Seven Peaks, Cascades Academy, Trinity Lutheran. There are a few others that are very small and only offer a few classes, but for the majority of children here in Bend, public school is the thing. There are 19 elementary schools in the Bend-Lapine School District, 9 middle schools, and technically 7 high schools. But that includes a technical school and a charter school, and Bend-Lapine also happens to have a couple of schools down in Sun River and Lapine. Now, aside from me just telling you that I think the schools are great here in the area from my personal perspective, I can also kind of show you. Greatschools.org is a website that kind of ranks schools all across the country. I mean, they got rankings for all the schools. The majority of the schools here in this area are rocking a 7, 8, or even a 9 out of 10. Lots of 8s and 9s out of 10. And to be honest, I have no idea how they are actually ranking these or what metrics or how up to date these rankings are. Because even the ones that didn't get a great ranking here in Central Oregon or here in Bend, I don't know that I really agree with the fact that they didn't give them a great ranking anyway. Next up, I want to talk about some of the activities that we have access to here in the area. In-town activities are amazing. Another really great reason why I love raising our kids here in the area is because there's so many amazing activities to do here. And we'll get to the outdoorsy ones here shortly too, but the Parks and Rec department here in Bend simply has no equal. Any sport you can possibly think of, there are opportunities here to be involved in it. And everyone participates. It's crazy. My son has informed me that he wants to play all the sports. Those were not my words. Those came directly from him. Although I do admit that my heart, when I heard that, kind of grew 3 sizes, right? I don't remember society having this same culture back when I was a kid, where kids did all these sports. And I'm not always saying that it's necessarily a good thing. There is burnout and there is keeping up with the Joneses and there is, oh, your kid didn't play all 4,200 sports that there are right now. But for us and our family, that is something that we do really like and enjoy. And so my kid's gonna be playing 3 different sports at the same time coming up this fall. Again, we were behind on this. We didn't even know that you could overlap all 3 of them based on how it worked. He learned that last season from his friends at school that played all these different sports at the same time. I don't even know how I'm gonna shuttle him around that much. But we're catching on. But this conversation goes so far beyond just youth sports. There are parks and trails and the river that you can float and surf. Then there are other non-parks related activities. There's the theater. There are club sports of almost every variety. There's the mountain, there's MBSEF, that's the Mountain Bachelors Sports Education Foundation, mainly for snow sports, but also cycling in the summer. Because there's mountain biking, lots of mountain biking. There's fishing, just drop on down to the river. Almost anywhere, even in town, and you can catch fish. That's wild. There's hiking, there's rock climbing, there's indoor climbing gyms, but there's also outdoor bouldering areas as well, right in town. There are just so many things to do here that children really get to enjoy a wide-ranging assortment of life activities that's going to enrich their lives forever. I was lucky that when I was growing up, I found that thing that I was super passionate about and committed the majority of my time and effort and energy towards, and that was hockey. And had I not found hockey, I probably would have found myself in heaps of trouble as a young kid. But there are so many people who grew up without a thing because their childhood environment didn't have that many options. If you got cut from the football team, you had nothing to do all summer long except go to the mall and get in trouble. Kids here have almost unlimited opportunities to explore and find their thing, whether it's a sport or something a little bit more out in the wild. Which leads me to the next great reason why we love raising our kids here in Bend. The adventure never ends. I talked about fishing before in the last one, like in town, but the real fishing is just outside of town, right? And camping, and hiking, and rock climbing, and hunting, downhill mountain biking, or heck, even the snow scene up at Mount Bachelor is really only 20 to 30 minutes up the road, with everything that you could possibly want up there. We regularly hear news stories about Central Oregon kids that are making history by doing things like being the youngest hunter to, successfully complete the North American Grand Slam, or being named as the next captain of the U.S. fly fishing team. There are probably dozens of Olympic skiers and snowboarders straight out of Bend alone, and they grew up here. A friend of mine I actually coached when he was a kid growing up is now an incredible mountaineer, and he summits mountaintops on the weekends while he's going to college. He also happens to be an incredible rock climber and an amazing fly fisherman. He can just do all of this stuff because he was here and he was raised on it. It just seems like every year there's some incredible story about some incredible kid or maybe even young adult who has achieved incredible feats simply because they were able to grow up here and had access to these kind of activities. It's crazy stuff here, people. Again, beating a drum here over and over again, but there's such an incredible abundance of outdoor activities. How could you not love it here? Just hiking up to a lake and spending a day paddleboarding around is enough to thank your lucky stars that you get to live here. That's how we feel anyway. All right, the last thing we're gonna talk about is that it'll always be a great place to return to. All right, now I needed 5 different things because it was kind of a nice, easy title, 4 great things isn't applicable enough. So we're going on with 5. However, we're gonna have to scan a little bit into the future to talk about this 5th thing, right? Alas, eventually everyone leaves the nest to spread their wings, which is why I'm glad we live here. You see, most people go on vacations at places like this. We get to live here. So when our children eventually leave to go become full-fledged, fully functioning adults, they're always gonna wanna come home. I mean, probably. Man, my wife hated growing up in Sisters when she was a kid. But a lot of that was because Sisters was really small and everybody knew everybody. It was almost claustrophobic. But now looking back with kids of her own, she'd happily move back to Sisters, and so would I. Small towns are the best. Everything is so much simpler, people are nicer. When my kids need to come home, we will be here to welcome them with open arms. When they decide that Bend is a great place to raise their family, we're not gonna disagree. In fact, we help grandparents move here all the time because their kids have decided to move to Bend and start raising their family. It's a beautiful place to live and a beautiful place to raise a family. Yeah, all right, enough, I get it. I'm not really a sentimental type, but it's special living here. If you have any questions, or maybe someone you know is looking to buy or sell here in the area, my team and I would love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can reach out to us at krommrealestate.com. We would love to hear from you and help you along your path and your journey. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you over in the next video.